I am so thrilled to have the one and only. I was like wondering where you were. I was like, it's fine. Hannah Pileggi, everybody. Hi.
My bad. Hi.
How are you?
I'm great.
Welcome. Have a seat, please. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Hannah comes to us all the way from Pittsburgh.
Woo!
Everything I know about Pittsburgh, I learned from the Pit.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's not that place. So, remember when I said you should totally finish grad school, and then like 48 hours later you dropped out of grad school to join Facebook?
Yeah, I've kind of famously never listened to Judd's advice.
Hey,
really,
it served you
really
extremely well.
It's interesting that you invited me to do this still, so that's
I
good.
knew
Like
you were
our
gonna throw
relationship
some
has
shade.
endured.
Yeah.
It's true. I was in a PhD program when I interned on Judd's team many moons ago, and I came to him and said, like, I've got a big idea. I'm going to drop out and work here. And he was like, no, you're not. And I was like, no, I am. And look at us now. So
yeah, here we are.
Yeah.
So what happened in the intervening years between that conversation and now?
Yeah, so my background, or I'll give it a little bit of contextualization of where we're coming from. My background is in statistics. I got a job in market research out of college. I was in a cubicle crunching numbers, and I said, like, has anybody talked to these people? And they were like, we don't do that here.
Wait, do what now?
And so that's why I went back to grad school. I found HCI. I did qualitative research. I became a mixed methods person. And then we had a stint together at Facebook. I can't call it Meta. I'm sorry. It's really hard for me. I'll try. And then I was at Airbnb for many years, and then most recently at Duolingo. So yeah, it's been a real ride.
A journey, huh?
Yeah.
So I feel like through that journey, you've had a chance to encounter some characters.
Right.
Like you got the Mark Zuckerbergs, you got the Brian Chesky's, you got the Louis Von Ahns of the world.
Yeah. I've got like a full bingo card of like billionaire, founder,
dudes.
CEO. Yeah. I've got a lot of experience there. Is there a question?
Well, the question is like, okay, no, I'm just name dropping.
Do you want their numbers? Is that
yeah. No, the thing I was thinking is like it's so interesting because we were talking earlier, and I think those are obviously very specific people, billionaire founder dudes. But it seems like you've also learned a lot from them about some of the challenges of influence and how to tackle them.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Wow. So I mean, I think what's interesting about the companies I've been at is they've been predominantly consumer-facing products. So I know that's not everyone in this room, but I would say that what comes with that is a dog fooding world. And like, please don't make me define that for this audience, but basically, we can use our own product, we can call our mom when we get the job and say like, hey, you can download the thing I work on. And that feels really good. But the flip side of that is that I'm spending a lot of time trying to convince you to listen to things when you can use it yourself, right? It's like, why would I need to hear from Susan in Kansas in a 45-minute unstructured interview when I just used it this morning? And I think that's been interesting for me to understand. How do you influence in a really dog foodable product world?
Yeah.
I had some early sort of flops with this that were pretty humbling. You mentioned Zuck. I think in Facebook, the sort of ultimate thing you want is a Zuck review. I was very green and early in my career. I had been doing some interesting research work. We'd pulled together this crazy series of focus groups and done a whole bunch of cool stuff. And I remember working through the weekend, so excited. It's my first Zuck review. We're going to go in. I'm going to blow his mind. Like, this is going to be awesome. And we got in the room, and he said, oh, I used it all weekend. You're going to tell me A, B, and C. And it was like exactly the slides.
You nailed it.
And it was crushing.
What?
Because
what
I was like, no, but like, let me show you the perfect clips that I worked on that show you A, B, and C.
You just pick up your laptop and leave it?
No, he actually was like, we can end the meeting. Like, it's A, B, and C. So that was sort of my intro to like, you gotta find new ways in a world where you're working with product leaders that can use it themselves. I feel this a lot at Duolingo too. Luis I think he does like 12 lessons a day. For a long time, he was like the top bug reporter. I'm looking at the Duolingo people in the audience, and it's like, how do
know
you
the answer.
compete
Yeah.
with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think in those contexts, it's like you got to find audiences that they cannot argue that they are a part of, right? So it's like at Duolingo, we had some of our first success was when we had a kids app. And I could be like, well, you're not a kid. Like,
Yeah.
I need you to see this 5-year-old using this thing because like,
Yeah.
you really, really can't relate to this. But also, I think surveys go a long way in this world too. Like a little healthy quant moment
Yes.
kind of softens the ground in a really dog-foodable product world. So I don't know. I think I've influenced when people weigh their own personal experience heavier than any of the research you're doing can be really tricky and really tough.
Yeah. So I feel like you're pointing at such an interesting thing we all encounter, which is like we work with a lot of people who are increasingly being told to use their intuition, their product sense.
Yeah.
And we're trying to use data and empathy and
Right.
qualitative and quantitative insights. So how do you break through the wall of intuition with like a product stakeholder, let's say?
Yeah, I mean, I believe a lot in storytelling. I believe a lot in kind of giving people a lot to look at that they can actually really engage in that will kind of question their own beliefs. It's sort of a tricky, it's a tricky part of this.
Yeah, I feel like something I watched you do well at Airbnb was like,
Yeah.
what didn't happen in a moment, you took them on a journey. Like what really the thing that allowed you to be very influential was not one study or one insight. It was
Right.
building up through many conversations about, let's say, experiences,
Right.
a sense among all these stakeholders that this cannot happen without Hannah in the room.
Yeah, cool. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that.
You can pay me later, it's fine.
Yeah, tee me up. I think that something I've always tried to do is create groundswell of influence. I think early in my career, I really, I sort of I thought attribution was influence. Like, I thought it was important that I was in the room raising my hand, saying the really, like, sexy research point, and it was attributed to me in the moment, and everyone clapped, and
Right.
Nobel Peace Prizes on the way. Like, you like feel it like
Mention
really
your name on
immediately.
stage.
But I actually think like over my career, I've learned a lot more that influence is when I'm not in the room. It's when there's advocacy from other people who have been along the ride for your work,
Right.
who are there with it, who are like, hey, when I was in the back room of that focus group with all those college kids, and everyone was like, you were what? Like it's the stuff when it's actually just not coming from me that's a lot cooler.
Yeah.
And creates a
Yeah.
heavier sense of influence.
So I want to come back to this point because I feel like a lot of researchers think that attribution and influence are the same, or
Yeah.
that what it means to be influential is to have some insight or outcome attributed to you. And you're saying, what are you saying about that?
What am I saying? I know. Am I going to get canceled for that? Like, I don't know. Here's my thing. Like, attribution matters. And like, once I'm running a discipline, you better bet that it's like calibration. I'm in the room being like, she did that,
Yep.
promote them.
It matters.
Like,
Yeah.
attribution matters. So like, that's not what I'm saying. But I think it's like, influence is this much deeper thing where it's sort of like less of the immediate instant gratification hit of like, ooh, sexy research points on the board. Like,
Yeah.
it's a lot more of like, okay, we make a good decision that ends up being good for users, it's good for UX, it's good for the brand, it's good for the da-da-da-da-da-da. And eventually everyone sits back and they're like, oh, that was because we listened to learners, we listened to customers, we listened to users, whatever you call kind of the segment of people. Who you care about. And I think that's the actual long game. Like, that's playing the long game with influence.
Yeah. So continuing with the journey we had at Airbnb together,
Yeah.
I feel like I wanted to ask you about an experience you were talking about with. So like you were talking about how you felt like you used to work really hard to try to onboard people to you, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
maybe there was an instance where that didn't work as well as you'd hoped. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I really stand by this idea that you need to onboard stakeholders to you and to what you do, but there's a real sweet spot. I think I went through some try-hard periods with this. I think that's probably what you're trying to get me to talk about. In my time at Airbnb, I'd been there for many years. A new business leader was coming in. It felt like changing of the guards. I felt like, okay, we gotta like show her we know what we're doing. so we can stick around, and kind of proved with her that like this is just how we do things here.
Yeah.
Like, research is so influential, and she was someone who was coming in, had like a long career at Procter & Gamble. She had been at Disney for many years. We sort of like back channeled to ask like, what can we learn about this woman to like really help? I see like some Airbnb people giggling in the crowd. Like how do we get to her? Like how do I get through to her? And what we heard is like she prints everything out. And I was like, okay, I can. Is there a printer in this building?
Yeah,
like I
we
can do that.
print.
Which like
paper.
literally like what am I printing? But like we figured it out. I got the team together. We basically took 4 years of research. We turned it into like 10 physical sheets of paper of like our greatest
Laminate
hits.
them.
We did. We put it in a fucking binder. I know. And we like our first meeting with her. We like sat down. We like gave her a binder and we were like, we heard
Here
you
you
like
go.
stuff printed, and like it didn't matter.
No,
you know,
it wasn't the thing.
she was looking for something different. Like she wasn't really expecting what we were putting out there anyway. And so I feel like the takeaway there was like, yeah, it was a good exercise to like turn all of our work into a few concise pages of like the greatest hits, but like the kind of going above and beyond. There was sort of like a thirsty element of it where we were really like, we're here for you. And
Right.
I think it's like, learn to sort of reel it in of like, I think Reba said it well of like, you're assuming best intentions. I'm assuming you're going to come in and care about what it is I do. So for my part, like I'm going to show up. I'm not going to assume you're going to like scroll through my repository and like come up with your own conclusions about our
Right.
work. But like, there's kind of this sweet spot of like, how do you onboard people to what it is that you do, how you want them to engage with you, how important you are,
Right.
without kind of like
Yeah.
flopping.
I feel like there's a research project there where it's like if you approach it, you're like, I'm not going to assume I know what it takes to get this person on board. I'm actually just going to approach it
Yeah.
from a point of curiosity.
I think that's a good way to put it. And it's also like, when I think about sometimes our work can get so specific, like when you think about the types of projects you've worked on, they've been such a specific moment in a time, or like hey, find out if this specific button should launch. And it's like, all of that stuff is now in my brain, and so I can sort through what of it is interesting and important to share with you. But I think that synthesizing of it is all like an important part of that onboarding conversation of like how, like, let me see what signals you're going to send to me of what it is that you're
Yeah,
looking for. and
absolutely.
I'll convert it for you. Yeah.
So when you sort of moved to Duolingo, it must have been like quite a different environment.
Yeah.
Like how did you think about that entry? Like I'm curious what advice you would give if you because we're not all starting new jobs all the time, but we do often get new stakeholders or move to new
Yeah.
teams or we
Yeah,
start working on a new feature or product. And we're sort of starting all over again in a way, like, okay,
Yeah.
I guess I'm going to build my influence.
Yeah,
again.
it's interesting. I think like we've all been through career transitions. You start to really feel like you have a lot of confidence in what it is that you do, and then you go somewhere new and no one knows you're awesome, and it's this real like setback where you have to kind of build it all up again. What's interesting about Duolingo in particular is it's actually a relatively small company, and it was when I got there. It's still sub 1,000 people. Very low turnover, a lot of people who've been there for a long time. And so it was kind of like you're walking into the party, everyone's been there for a long time. It's like a light record scratch where it's like, who's she? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, help us.
Let's find out.
And so it's sort of this like steep hill to climb to say like, especially again, dog foodable product, like I'm here to help. And it's
Yeah.
like, we don't need help. I think that, that transition can be difficult. I also think that as you're building out, like sort of as a research leader by that point in my career, when you're thinking about the team and how to sort of like help them all be as impactful as possible, it's like the sort of plans you've used in the past or at past companies, those things suddenly don't work. And so it's a lot of like really trying to understand the environment you're in, doing a lot of expert interviewing of your new stakeholders, and
Right.
just being like willing to flop a little bit and work your way through.
How do you find your people? Like when you're like trying to find allies, how do you find them?
Yeah, I would say that I didn't understand this to be the case early in my career, but I've started to understand that it's like they're tastemakers. I think especially like in a growingly AI world, there are a lot of think pieces right now about taste and like who sets taste and what that means. Everywhere I've worked, there have been tastemakers, and they are not the decision makers. And so if you think about it, like, ultimately they're decision makers, but really they're sort of the people behind the people. They're either just like cool or plugged in some way, or they've been there for a long time. And I think, when I think about the investment and the relationships with the tastemakers, bringing them along in research, engaging them in research, having them become evangelists of research, that stuff has always really amplified my work and my team's work.
Right.
And it's like, how do you find the tastemakers? I don't know. I think it's like you sort of look around. It's do what we do. We observe environments. You sort of like anthropologically understand. You're like, why is that guy so important? Like,
so the project is like trying to do research on the social dynamics of decision makers and figure out like who's a tastemaker, who's a decision maker, who should we target.
I guess. I mean, you're making it sound really calculated, but I think it's like I fumbled my way into that, where it's like, some of the best examples of this happening to me, like I can think of times at Facebook where, there's just like a really prolific designer. He's just really cool, undeniably cool. He kind of begrudgingly comes along on a research trip and then, ends up being in a room somewhere where he's just like shooting it. And he's like, I was watching these teenagers and, they were complaining about this thing with Snapchat. And so I designed this whole thing over the weekend and like, isn't research so cool? And it's like, like he just did so much more than I could have done with that insight. And so it's something about like the positioning of how things work, the power dynamic. I think it's like, if you believe it's just totally a utopian society where we like all have equal voices and we should all just like have this equal seat at the table, I think it's just kind of setting it back a little bit from the reality, which is like there are people who are listened to more. It's not, we don't need to debate like if that's right or wrong, but it's like when those people are champions of research because they feel like it's really unlocked and opened up new insights for them, like that's huge. That amplifies all the work.
Yeah. So you used the phrase seat at the table, a thing researchers have been concerned about for some time now.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious your take on like, should we be worried about our seat at the table? Is it the right thing to be thinking about? Like, what does that mean to you?
I just want you to know these are none of the questions that we agreed on. So you're really putting me. This is good. This is good. You're getting really candid stuff here. Seat at the table. Good, Judd, great.
Did I forget to tell you we were going to talk about this? Okay, cool.
Look, I again think this is, if we want to do like a early in the career, what it felt like to where I am now, it's like, I wanted to be in the fucking room. I always want to be in the room.
Heck
you want to be in the room. I want it to come directly from me. Sorry, am I not supposed to swear? Sorry.
No, you can fucking swear.
Me. Okay. And I still think that matters, and especially like once you're running a team of people, it's like I want my people in the room. I do. I want them to get the context. I want to hear it from the horse's mouth. But I go back and forth on the seat at the table. It's like, of course, like in the sort of macro sense, but you can't be in all the rooms, like quite literally at all the times. And that's why I really think about like how do you amplify sort of your advocates who will be in all of the rooms to both, speak up on your behalf and like feed info back to you. Like this is why I think a lot about like, okay, we're at this conference, it's all researchers, we have a whole track about influence, okay? What other genres, like who of your peers have a conference talking about influence?
Need to do that?
Right, and it's like, maybe data science, maybe product writing, maybe, it's like, those are your people. Like I feel very strongly like those are my people. Like if we are sort of at the same place where we're trying to think about influence and advocacy of our work, like partner up. There's a woman who I mentor, we talk through some things and she's usually telling me about some tough situations and I'll say like, well, what does the data scientist think?
Yeah.
She'll say, I don't know who the data scientist is. And I'm like, let's start there because it's like, there are other people in similar spots who also want to be influential in certain ways, who really should know about your work. You should know about their work. Together, you're stronger. I mean, there's like some, I don't know, Avengers metaphor or something I'm missing here, but like, I believe very strongly in, the little guy kind of
sticking together.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, okay, we have a few minutes left, and I want to get really concrete. Like, this has not been concrete so far. No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
So like so if you're speaking to a room full of researchers and the question is like, how do you actually become influential? Like what's like a top suggestion from your experience?
We touched on tastemaking.
Yes.
I think that's important. I think it is like, ultimately you want to be the taste. You want to be the trend. You want to lead it there because you are so of the people, so in touch with the audience that you're trying to provide for, that you're really leading others. But I think identifying sort of the tastemakers versus the decision makers, how you engage with each of them. I think this sort of idea we talked about with attribution versus influence is important. I think teaming up with the little guys, the other sort of smaller functions, and what that can mean.
I feel like another thing you said that's really compelling is the need to be more specific. Like, what are we trying to influence? Not just who, but what. Say more about that.
It's true. I mean, I think it's like, are we influencing people, or are we influencing product? I think on this meta point of like, if I'm an anthropological studying the environment, it's like, which people in the room am I influencing to make a different decision? But ultimately, like, trying to influence the product, the things we're putting out, having a better product experience that ideally, is good for the company, is good for the business, but like good for the world and good for all these things. So I do think it's like understanding really who are you trying, what is it that we're focused on influencing, and being pretty specific about that. Yeah.
I love it. Hannah, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving us your advice. Hannah Pileggi, everybody.
Thank you.